Absolutely phenomenal morning, guys. This is your Breakfast with the Brand. I am your host, Shaan, as always, flanked by the phenomenal Bobby Jackson. And of course, we have Junior Frederick with us again on this Saturday morning. Listen, guys, it is the second day of the beginning of the end. That's right, the beginning of the end. This is the last month of the first quarter. The last month of the first quarter. So we've been going live every single day prior to this, every single day of the week, talking about your last first, your next first. And what a way to culminate it. What a way to culminate it. We had a phenomenal guest yesterday. Last week, and we're going to bring him back again today. He'll be coming out in a couple of moments. This is a phenomenal second day, the beginning of the last month, last week, last everything when it comes to the first quarter. Bobby Jackson, how are you feeling over there, sir?
Feeling phenomenal. I'm just thinking about what we're actually doing today. We're celebrating our heroes while they're still living. And I was thinking about, because last month was Black History Month, and if I remember correctly, this month is Women's Month. It's like the month where we celebrate various women that have done extraordinary things. And as I think about what we're about to talk about today, I'm just like, man, we're making history. You're making history. You know, as you're watching this, everybody every day is making history. And it's a matter of what story will be told about you when it's all said and done. So I'm happy to hear more about the phenomenal guest and the legacy that he's leaving for us.
Very good, very good. Junior Frederick, how are you doing over there, sir?
Sean, doing phenomenal as usual. Listen, I am super ecstatic about bringing on this particular guest once again. Bobby, that's really interesting that you mentioned that. So it's Women's History Month. And I think I mentioned the last time that my country is actually the only country in the world that is named after a woman. So shout out to all the phenomenal women. I'm ready. I'm ready to get into it, man. I'm ready to see what this conversation brings. I'm very interested. Okay. And I think when people become interested, they make the conversation interesting. So I'm very interested to see where it goes.
Very good, guys. One thing I want you to think about before we bring on the guest as we go to the first break again, again, this is the last quarter. This is the last quarter of the first quarter. Like, break it down, break it down. We've been talking about the weeks and how you break the week into a quarter. You want to think about your numbers. You want to think about your impact. This is something that you have to do in leadership. You have to put everything under the microscope. Everything goes under the microscope. Everything goes under a filter. You have to be mindful of the very precious moments that you have. It's sort of like a military operation. Everything has to be dissected down to the finest particles and the finest elements, because that which you track, that which you measure, you can improve. And if you don't track it, if you don't measure it, you have no control over it. As a matter of fact, it has control over you. And you're kind of caught in the storm and don't really know what's going on. So mindfulness, tracking, measuring, these are elements of leadership. Elements of leadership. And you cannot run a business. You can't be a CEO, business owner, key executive, emerging leader, phenomenal entrepreneur without understanding and incorporating the core tenets of leadership into your business, into yourself as an individual. So share this out. Share this out. Tag someone who needs to hear this. And that's everybody that you know. Everybody that needs to know this information, needs to understand how leadership is incorporated into their communication, into their relationships that they build with themselves internally and then externally with the stakeholders. In business, out of business, family members, community, everybody needs more and more leadership. This is the Breakfast with the Brand, and we'll be right back with this phenomenal guest. But just think about it, guys. The end of the first quarter, 2024. What's possible? There's slow growth and then there's scale. There's incremental growth, and then there's exponential growth. What I want to talk to you about is adding a zero to you and experiencing exponential scale. Incremental growth says 1 + 1 is 2. Exponential growth says 1 + 0 is 10. Incremental growth says 2 + 2 is 4. Exponential growth says 5 + 0 is 50. Guys, listen, when you add a zero to you, you can add a zero to the marketplace. You can add a zero to the value that you bring. So you can add a zero to your family, add a zero to your legacy. This is what we're talking about. We're not talking about incremental, we're talking about exponential. I always say that business is a spiritual game. Just imagine when you combine your skills, your values, your abilities, your talents to something bigger than you, something greater than you, something like the power of exponential. That is adding a zero. Add a zero to your competence, add a zero to your confidence. This is about adding a zero in your life, your value, your industry, and your mission. Let's grow. The reason why I did this and what I do is help leaders to become brands and brand themselves. You train people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. I teach authenticity marketing. If people can take advantage of you, they will in your personal or professional existence.
My biggest takeaway just from day one is you are the brand. I would recommend it to anybody that's really looking to build a personal brand.
Just the brand in general has changed my life. I've grown so much since I've been a part of this.
I see myself in what he does, and I believe in it just as much as I believe in myself.
All right, guys, welcome back. Welcome back. Joel, welcome back to the Breakfast with the Brand.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for having me back. Gentlemen, how are you?
Absolutely phenomenal.
I guess I'm going to take a page out of you all saying I'm phenomenal as well, but I'm going to go even further. I'm feeling very exceptional today.
Very good. Very good. Exceptional leadership. Exceptional leadership. So, guys, last week we were talking and we went real deep and it seemed like the time just escaped us, right? So we had to bring Joel back again. Living leadership legend in person, right? Not posthumous, not after the case, not after the fact. We were talking about piloting. We were talking about flights and how flying relates to leadership, tumultuous predicaments and situations and business and teamwork and manufacturing operations when things go wrong. And the time just before we knew it, it looked like the first break, but it was actually the end of the hour. So I said, okay, we got to do this again, backed by popular demand. You know, Joel, first off, let's just let everybody know, like, kind of give them a menu of why we refer to you the way that we do and why you're actually here and what gives you credibility and validity so people will understand why to tune in, why to listen to what you have to say, and why it's what we call evidence-based.
Okay. In short, we're going to have to give you a little bit of background on myself.
Thank you.
I retired from the military, from the United States Army after a little over 31 years, almost 32 years of service. I had a very diverse background in what I did in the military. So not only was I an aviator, I was also privileged and honored to be selected to attend the United States Army's senior leader conferences that we would have. That was over in West Virginia. I was also a part of the Army's Human Resources Command, first as a career manager. When we say career manager, for instance, I flew attack helicopters, Apaches. So I managed the Apache community around the world. So all those aviators, I was responsible for sending them to their schools, to their leadership training, for moving them and their families to different locations. It all started with me in the Army's Human Resources Command, and it went through my chain of command and so forth out to the units where orders were cut and people began to move and go where they needed to go. Additionally, I was also privileged enough to serve my final tour in the Army's Inspector General agency. So having done that, one of the tenets of the Inspector General is not only to go out and inspect and investigate and do all those good things. We did a lot of teaching. We made sure that the Army's standards were being met according to the regulations and the guidelines that were out there. So I was privileged enough to lead teams and go out and conduct inspections that impacted the Army as a whole. So the reports that we generated at that level went to departmental level for decision and whether they were going to go forward with recommendations, make changes, or change regulations that were out there in the field for the force to continue to move forward with. Having done all that, I also have a degree in aerospace, working on my master's in organizational leadership and a doctorate in organizational leadership. So doing all these things and looking at what it took to become a leader in my venue is what led me to where I am. 30 years of service, all of it in some capacity. Even if you are private when you first come in, you're coming in with the expectation that you're going to be a leader. So as a leader going forward, you are developing competencies at each level of promotion, at each level of responsibility, at each level of the command structure. So having done that, I think I have a little bit to say, a little bit that I can share and coach others in how to develop their leadership, how to develop their teams, and how to progress and be ready to deal with the complexities and the adaptive nature of being a strategic leader.
Just a little bit, right? Just a smidge. Now, I heard something, and I don't want to take the entire time, so I'm gonna let my team, have at it, and I'm gonna let you expound. But I did hear one thing that people might not have heard. Did you say doctorate?
Working on doctorate in organizational leadership.
Very good. Very good. Very good. So when we say evidence-based in the leadership leverage, there's a criteria. There's a criteria. Because what Joel is talking about is not motivation. he's talking about way beyond, like this is actual. So let me ask you this real quick before I pass it over to the team. Wartime and peacetime, correct?
Yes.
How many arenas, how many wartime arenas have you been a part of strategically in reality?
So there's a difference between wartime and deployment. Wartime arenas, 2. Actual deployments where combat operations were taking place, 7.
Come on, let's go. All right, guys. So this is what I mean when I say living leadership legend, right? You guys have questions, put them in the comments. I know we had some questions we couldn't attend to by the panel. So I'm gonna let Junior go ahead and start off. What kind of questions do you have for Joel?
So Shaan, I'm always taking notes. I think the last time we met, I had like 3 pages of notes. What I find fascinating with Joel is, so I wrote down teaching, I wrote down standards, I wrote down inspecting, I wrote down strategic leadership. Now, as somebody who has seen, what we just spoke about, which is you've seen deployment, you've seen wartime situations, like from your lens, how does strategic leadership begin? Like where does it begin for you? Or how do you, because I'm always trying to understand where people are coming from. I believe that if I can gain somebody's perspective, I could sort of master the way that they think. So from your perspective, where does strategic leadership begin?
It begins first by defining strategic leadership. In its simplest terms, strategic leadership is about leading an organization to reach its goals. Plain and simple, short and sweet, getting everybody on the same page, moving in the same direction with the same common objective and achieving that objective. That's the first thing, understanding what strategic leadership is. After that, It is individuals aligning their competencies to the demands of the environment that they're in. What am I meaning? What am I saying by that? The consequences for strategic leaders not or failing to develop their competencies is pretty clear. Mission failure for the most part. Well, how do they do that? A meta-analysis of the development research shows that leaders successfully advance from junior to senior levels. They don't replace old competencies that they've learned. They develop those competencies and they adapt them to the environment that they are encountering. When leaders fail to adapt or fail to adjust to the complex nature of strategic environment, you said something last week that I wrote down, and I'm going to re-paraphrase it. When your back is against the wall, you fall to your worst level of skill. Well, let's put that another way. If you're unprepared and you're unfamiliar, your attention to the familiar and comfortable matters, you're liable to default back to those tried and true methods that you did before.
Yeah. Yep.
Being able to approach and enter the complex, adaptive environment that strategic leadership takes place is critical, that your competencies are adaptable and that they are, for lack of a better term, they are grown. If you don't grow your competencies, if you don't have competencies that can adapt, you're destined to fall back to tried and true, and you're destined not to make the leap from simple to the complex.
Yes, sir. So I have a follow-up question from that. Yeah, because this is really interesting because
Junior's the master of the compound questions, Joe.
Yeah.
The one leads to the two. It's a 1-2 question, 1-2 punch. Go ahead.
Yeah, one, two. So, and the reason I find this so interesting is because even here on island, I've heard situations of so many organizations. For example, you have leaders in organizations. Let's say a leader gives a directive. You have some people that follow the directive, and you have some people that don't, right? And in like the army, we know the consequences of people not following directives. So my follow-up question to you is, what is that linchpin? Like, how can you be sure? Because it seems like as a strategic leader, you're sitting so far up the chain, and then you're dispensing commands or directives to people down the chain, right? How can you be 100% sure that they're going to follow through? Or what is that thing? Is it a culture? Like, what is the element that makes you certain, or that you can guarantee that when I give a directive that I know that they're going to follow through? Like, what is that thing? So that's the first question. And then my last one, in fact, I love when you said adaptable competency, because there's this thing called first principles thinking. So it said that most people, they reason from analogy, meaning that if I did something in the past and it worked, it must mean that if I do it today, it's going to work. That's how most of us reason. But it sounds to me like with strategic leadership, you're not necessarily reasoning from analogy. You're looking at it from a completely new perspective, or an adaptive perspective, where you're trying to get to the goal, but you're not saying, because I did it this way before, I expect this way to work now. Is that what you're saying? So that was number 2, and that's it for me.
All right. Well, number one, the first
Yes, sir.
things first, you were asking how, when we issue directives, you issue orders and all the above, how are you certain that those guidelines or those orders are followed to the T? There's never 100% certainty that orders, directives, commands will be followed exactly to the T. That's an impossibility that it just simply can't happen in a strategic competition and leadership, because it's a dynamic and complex environment. A permanent solution is neither a natural state of such competition nor a legitimate goal of the strategy. We give people the ability to think in the military. How does that translate in the side of the civilian side? You're expecting your personnel, your people, your managers, your regional managers, your corporate managers to think. So one, is your guidance, is your orders, are your directives clear and concise? So at the end of the day, no matter what I tell you, I've got an objective or a goal at the end of that statement. Is it clear and concise? So I'm telling you, this is how I want you to accomplish it. I want you to accomplish this goal. I'm giving you the free range and latitude to adjust as you see fit to reach my end state. Strategic leaders are not looking at the right now. They're looking at the future. So I'm going to give you something that's going to allow you to complete the objective for today, knowing that I have future goals that we're trying to attain. So I'm future casting. You're looking at something that I've given you just for today. My thought process is, what is today and how is it going to impact me 6 months, a year and a half down the road, 5 years down the road? So that's what strategic leaders are doing. I'm giving you the directive at the junior level and expecting you to go forth. How you would do it, as long as it's within the guidelines, execute. I'm not going to babysit you. I'm not going to continuously look over your shoulder. I'm expecting you to go do it. Now, from the military standpoint, yes, somebody gives you an order, you're expected to follow it. If it is a lawful order. Do soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen sometimes not follow orders? Absolutely. And there are consequences that, of course, go along with that. Totally different thing. Civilian side, are there penalties or things that can take place if you don't follow directives, orders, stay in compliance? Yes, you can lose your job. You can get written up, all those kinds of things. So hopefully that answered your first question. The second question, you're going to have to kind of re-ask that, because it was kind of broad in its concept.
Yeah, so with the second question, what really caught my attention was when you said adaptable competencies. So I'm imagining something basically like you're taking your mold or your shape as you go along. That's what I understand. So it's like I have this competency right now, but I'm not saying that this competency that I have right now is enough of a competency for where I need to go tomorrow. That's what I understood from what you're saying. And what I was saying is that most people, they reason from analogy. So let's say I'll use our industry. So let's say you're a coach and you got a client from Facebook from doing a particular thing. It's natural for that coach to say, well, if I do that thing again, I'm going to get the client again. But what you're saying as a strategic leader, when you set a directive or when you set an objective, you're not necessarily reasoning from analogy. You're saying, based on the new information I have, what do I need to do in order to hit my goal? And sometimes that involves you learning different skills, which is what I understand when you said adaptable competency. So I just wanted to speak to that just a little bit more. I know we have to go to a break in a while, but if you could just relate it to us, like to the average person, like what does that look like for their business and the way that you help organizations in that way?
Okay, if you recall, I said yes, you're developing these competencies and they're growing. It doesn't mean that each level that you go up that you're getting new competencies. You're adapting the competencies that you have to the environment that you've just entered. Is it possible for you to learn new competencies? Absolutely. But the human brain can only contain and process so much information. That's why you have all these different teams. Your marketing, Bobby is the wealth strategist, Shaan is the king. Each of you have your niche, and within that, you're an expert. But for me to ask Bobby to come over to the marketing side of the house, he may have some understanding of it, but could he effectively and influentially work within that environment as well as you do?
Right.
Possibly not. But because he knows his niche and he knows where he is, he develops within his lane according to which environment he's entering into. So as he goes up in the environment, he continues to progress within that environment. So he's not developing new competencies. He's adapting competencies that he already has.
All right. Thank you.
And also, I think I heard the leverage of other leaders as well. Teamwork and leveraging other leaders in their, what we call the exponential zone, like in their gift space, keeping sweet where sweet belongs and staying in your own lane as opposed to trying to, have the bleed over and spill over, jack of many trades, master of none situation. Guys, this is the Breakfast with the Brand. We will be right back with Joel D. Smith. Get your questions ready. Get your questions prepared. And I want you to apply everything that he's saying to your business now. And if you can't make the correlation, if you can't make the crossover, then ask a question and we'll get that answered for you. Let's grow. It's very important that you know yourself to the highest degree possible, because it's through knowing ourselves that we're able to know other people. You are the most important person in the room, and the better that you know yourself, the better that you're able to communicate to others. So you're not only playing the game knowing who you are, but you're also playing the game knowing who everyone else is, so that you're not playing blind.
He's extremely engaging with people. He has a fantastic smile, and he's just very high energy person.
This is called leadership development. So we have to be independently knowledgeable and considerate to know who we are, so we can more effectively know who other people are. As the leader, it's your responsibility to allocate resources in the right places. If you don't know how to communicate effectively, you're losing the battle. I said Shaan Rais. I'm proud. I said Shaan Rais. Leadership is not the brand they made for us.
Listen, he brought fire, heat. He didn't hold back.
20 years down the line, what I could sell, why not serve first? Service over salary. Branding like a leader closes the gap for people who want branding. Speaking like a leader closes the gap for people who are nervous about speaking. If Steve Jobs would have speculated, we wouldn't have Apple.
He changed lives. He helped people open up their business and start their business.
We are the brand. Some people say, Shaan, should I quit my job? Mentally, yes.
As a speaker too, to be able to learn from him and watch him and game respects game. And I want to have that much game someday.
The right client, pay $500,000 for what you do. You have to be bold in your beliefs.
He has been an amazing asset to this event and a pleasure to work with. Very captivating, collaborative, worked very well with the audience.
I want to help you. Put a 0 behind your number, right?
The session was great. How he is online, virtually, he is even more phenomenal in person.
Be the face of change that you want to see. Stop asking questions and start giving demands.
The entire team has just been absolutely incredible. They are a joy to work with. They go above and beyond.
Give yourself a round of applause. Yes, yes, yes. All right, guys, this is your Breakfast with the Brand, and we are back with Joel D. Smith, living leadership legend. Bobby, go ahead. I know you got a question, and I know we've been compounding questions and sneaking 3 where 1 should be. Junior Frederick is strategic questions. Bobby, what question do you have for Joel Smith?
Yes. So my question is about readiness, but I want to help the audience really understand this question so that they can benefit in their business. So my question to the audience, as I prepare to give, so imagine this is like a you, right? This is going to be, I'm going to throw it up, and then Joel is about to slam it down for you guys. So the question that I have for you all is, was your company ready to capitalize on every opportunity it was presented with in the past 2 months? So we've been in business so far for 60 days. It is now the 2nd day of March, and we're about to end the quarter. My question to you was, with every opportunity that your business has been presented with the opportunity to close a deal, the opportunity to add a new client, the opportunity to fix something in your organization, the opportunity to hire someone. Were you all ready to take advantage and capitalize on those opportunities? If not, that's what I'm about to ask Joel a question on, because readiness is everything. It's preparedness. It is when opportunity meets preparation. So I'm about to ask Joel a question that should help uncover some gems tied to how to prepare as a strategic leader so that you can capitalize on your business opportunities. So as I pass it to you, Joel, there's mission readiness, a term I'm sure you've heard. For my entrepreneurs out there, for those of you all that are listening, I just want you to move mission and replace it with business. So Joel, mission readiness; for the viewers, business readiness. Because when we say mission readiness in the military, what we're saying is, how ready are you if the enemy attacks? Are we ready to retaliate? In business, how ready are you for the next deal to close or the next deal to fail? Are you ready to deal with both of those? So my question to Joel is this: how does strategic leadership, how do you develop strategic leaders so that they can respond effectively to adapting and uncertain situations such as business or the battlefield, so that these individuals can see opportunities, seize opportunities, and ultimately keep their business at the highest state of readiness?
Well, first off, as a strategic leader, you have to understand that at the level, when you're speaking strategic leadership, you're looking outside of your organization. You're looking at the environment, you're looking at the world, you're looking at your competition. That's number one. A strategic leader looks outside of the organization. And again, they're looking future cast. They're looking towards 6 months, a year, 5 years down the road. They're not looking at the right now. They're looking future cast. So you're looking outside of your organization. 2, there's the understanding that there are no winners. I'm going to say that one more time. There are no winners in strategic competition. There's only leaders, laggards, and losers. Leaders are those actors who have choices and resources that puts them in an advantageous position relative to their competition. What am I saying? From the United States military standpoint, what have we always heard? We want to show up to the battlefield with overmatching power. We might not show up with significant numbers, but our technology, the firepower that we bring to the field, the motivation of our troops and sailors and Marines and airmen that we bring to the field, we want it to be overmatching. So much so that, like Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan till you get hit in the mouth. When we hit you in the mouth, we want your plan to falter. We want it to fracture. We want it to be disseminated. So I'm looking to destroy you right off the bat. Well, think about it. Is it not the same in business? You're trying to do what to your competitors? You're trying to break them. You're trying to get ahead of them. So in order to do that, you have to look outside of your organization. So we said leaders. Let's look at laggards. They're competing with these leaders. It's just they don't happen to have the resources or the manpower, as it were, to either keep up, to maintain their ground, or they start losing ground. They're still in the game, though. Let's look at it from a world perspective. And Nazi Germany, they lost the war. Fascists that were coming out of Italy, they lost the war. Are they still in existence today? Absolutely.
That's right.
So they're lagging behind what the leaders who won the war did. They're lagging, but they still have an existence. And it's still a very real possibility that they could rise again if the world is not paying attention. Would you agree upon that?
Definitely.
So there is the example of leaders and laggers. Losers, well, they're pretty much out the game. You're talking about an extinction level event. You're starting to look at the dinosaurs. They over 200 million years, they had their time. The world is dominated right now by mammals. How many years we're going to keep that? Yeah, that's still to be determined. But the losers are basically, they faced an extinction level event. They're no longer there. So you have leaders in strategic competition. You have leaders, you have laggards, you have losers. Going from mission readiness to business readiness. Do you have the right personnel? Do you have the right resources? Do you have the right technologies in place to effectively operate in the combat environment, whether it is war or business, because business is war?
Yes, it is.
Do you have those things in place to effectively fight your battles?
Yeah. And thank you, Joe, for answering my question so comprehensively, because that's really what I wanted to help the audience see, is that there's so much here. And I just wanted to help you all as we continue this conversation to really unpack it, So just think about what was just said and identify yourself. Are you the laggard? Are you the loser? Or are you the leader? And if you're the laggard, own the position and change it. If you lost, okay, get back in the game. That's the beautiful thing about being a human being. It's not over until you say it's over. So if it's not over, then get back in the game. But thank you, Joel, for that explanation. And guys, please leverage that. Get your technology right. Get your leadership right. Get your brand right so you can lead right.
This is very priceless, guys. I want you to understand that you don't get this level, this height, this 36,000 feet vertical vision and viewpoint and conversation much anywhere else, except at these high levels of leadership. So if Joe wasn't here, like when he was in the military, he would be having these conversations at the very top of the food chain. He would not be talking to privates or people just coming into the military. They would not meet Joel. They would only see Joel after years and years of tenure. But what they would be executing on the ground floor would be the derivative and translation of strategic thoughts and initiatives given from a high vertical. And these are the kind of conversations that we have inside of the leadership leverage. So if you're not a part of something that provides this viewpoint, or if you're a little bit lost as you're hearing the conversation, you want to become nearer to the conversation so that conversations like this can become comfortable and commonplace for you. And then you can begin to break, decimate, crush, and cripple the competition in your vertical. So Bobby asked the question, are you the loser? Are you the laggard? Or are you the leader in your vertical? And make no mistake about it, business is war, and your bank account is the scorecard. Make no mistake about it. Not vanity metrics, financial numbers, client deals closed, contracts signed, revenue retained, revenue brought in, new revenue, recurring revenue, ARR, MRR. These are the things that measure, these are the financial instruments, mechanics, and systems that will determine whether you are the leader, the laggard, or the loser in your vertical. This is not a cushiony conversation. This is not a conversation for the meek. That's why I said, like at the very beginning, like this is not motivation. Let me ask you that, Joel. In the battlefield, when lives hang in the balance, what is your viewpoint on motivation versus discipline?
My viewpoint on motivation is we all signed on the dotted line when we came into the military. That is not to say that those that signed on the dotted line had ulterior motives. For me, I knew when I signed on the dotted line, there was a real possibility that at some point in time, my nation would call upon me to go down range and engage in combat operations. As I used to say, they're asking me to go down range to motivate somebody else to stop acting a nut. You know, okay, you over here acting the fool, so now I've got to come over here and apply some act right to your attitude. That was my motivation. My motivation was for the person, the man, the woman to my left and to my right, to my front and to my rear. That was my motivation. My motivation was the fact that my family was back here in the United States, and ensuring that they remain safe and ensuring that they never had to face the horrors, the sounds, the smells of war. I'm going over here to do something. Didn't matter whether I totally agreed with it or not. My nation called upon me to do something, so I needed to go execute.
Tell me about the discipline piece.
That was my motivation. The discipline piece came with training. Continuous training. I hear you say it all the while, and I tell people all the time, learning never stops. It's a reoccurring event. No matter where you are in your business cycle, no matter the position that you hold, it's always some training that you can be doing to enhance your culpability, your ability to act, your ability to perform in your space. When you stop training, when you stop learning, that's when you need to retire, because you've just become dangerous, because no one can teach you anything else. So learning was the discipline, continuously willing to learn, continuously willing to be a follower. We talked about it last week, being a willing follower. So before becoming the leader, success is about building who? Yourself. After becoming a leader, success is about building who? Others. So we're continuously learning and building. When you stop doing that, you need to go ahead and chalk it up. You've done a job well done. Now it's time to go sit down and relax and enjoy your days. Very good. Motivation and drive and determination.
Very good. Very good. Guys, you're getting a doctorate right now in evidence-based strategic leadership. We don't bring people on the Breakfast with the Brand lightly. I weigh very heavily standardization, evidence-based concepts. Are you the real person? Is what you're going to say valid? Is it battle tested? Is it industry specific, or is it applicable? Is it non-binary? Does it cross paths? Does it cross correlate with multiple different industries? And what you're learning right now can be applied to any industry that you're in, because it's a thinking exercise. I tell leaders all the time, Joel, I say that your highest value, the highest value of a CEO is their ability to think. And so many times there's so many distractions on the battlefield that people are reactionary. They're not responsive. And people are simple at best, and they lack strategy. They lack vision. They lack long-term sight range. They can't see 30 yards. They can't see 30 inches in front of themselves, because they're constantly responding, reacting to everything. You know, it's a long game that you're talking about. And that's why when you talk about the arena of battle, I hear you consistently say 5-year projection, 10-year projection. How is this going to have an effect in 5 years, 10 years? Most people are trying to secure the next 5 minutes. They have no vision for the next 5 years. So I wanted to, because some of our story defies logic. And guys, if you're writing right now, if you have a writing instrument next to you, which you should, legendary leadership defies logic. Write that down. Legendary leadership defies logic. There's certain things that happen on the battlefield that just change the game. So there's game players who play by the rules of engagement. And then there's game changers who change the rules of engagement. So when you hear about 450K in less than 90 days, no ads, no photo, no email list, no CRM, that's a game changer. That's a precedent that had not happened before, nor has happened since. And it's based on numbers. It's not based on motivation and having a great heart and wanting to help people and kumbaya. No, evidence-based metrics, measurable, trackable, calculable. 450K, less than 90 days, none of the funny stuff everybody says you need to be successful. I want to talk about another one because, Joe, we were talking on the back end about another defining moment that was defiant to convention in one Dwight Eisenhower. Tell me about his speed of acceleration and how his graduation and acceleration in different chambers and legend, the levels of leadership, how he kind of extended those, what we would call an exponential zone. How did that happen? And just give everybody watching a lesson on history and a lesson on phenomenality and a lesson on exponential leadership.
Not to go too deep in it because I know time is short on us, but I like to use Dwight Eisenhower simply because of his meteoric rise in the military during a time of conflict. We're speaking about the world wars, in particular World War II. Entering into it, the first year that we entered into it, he came in as lieutenant colonel. This gentleman was promoted 3 times in a year. That's unheard of for the most part. Could it have been because of losses in the formation? Sure, that's what happens when we have military, and as you saw in the Civil War and even in the Napoleon era, when battlefield commanders meet their demise, unfortunately, somebody is promoted up. So could that have been the case? Yes. In this case with Dwight Eisenhower, no, it absolutely was not the case. What was more of the case was his ability to think strategically. So we think about what he did. He had that ability to look to the future, to have his personnel, his supplies, his resources, his team looking beyond today, beyond today's operations. One of the big things that former president and 5-star General Eisenhower did was he was the catalyst orchestrating D-Day, the Allied approach and landing at Normandy and all across. There was a lot of resistance to launching D-Day when it happened. But there's a lot of things that took place in that. You had to look at what? Not only did we have the personnel in place, not only did we have the airlift assets and the sea assets in place, we also had to have some help. Mother Nature had to cooperate. Were the seas going to be rough? Were the skies going to be able to allow an airborne drop? The airborne drop of the 101st and the 82nd was not across the broad spectrum looked at as a smart idea. There was pushback to Eisenhower as to launching this. They thought they were going to put those 2 divisions, the 101st and 82nd, into a death trap. He literally had to go off, and one thing strategic leaders must find time to do, he went off to himself and had time to think.
That's right.
He sat down and took some time to think, to weigh all the options that his leaders were sharing with him, their thoughts. A senior leader takes into consideration those things that are brought to him by his team, business or military, doesn't matter. You want to hear what everyone has to say, but the strategic leader has to have the foresight, the intestinal fortitude, and that killer instinct to make that decision.
Very good.
Decision has been made. This is what I'm going to do. Let's execute. And was it flawless? Did we have losses on D-Day? Absolutely. But did we catch those forces, the Germans in particular, off guard? Absolutely. What was one of his driving forces? We didn't know what Germany was doing as far as making new equipment and building new equipment that they could employ against us. So we needed to act. The jet fighter had just come into existence and was being active. Now, we were still flying prop aircraft, P-52s, and all heard of the Tuskegee Airmen and some of the planes that we're flying props. We didn't have jets. The Germans have now developed jets. Now, imagine if it had been delayed 2-3 months as we're trying to get everything picture perfect. What could they have brought to the forefront on that battlefront that could have affected or denied us that beachhead to get our foot in Europe to be able to march in towards Berlin? Strategic thinking.
That's right.
He weighed the risk because, when you look at it, complexity versus adaptivity. In a complex environment, and Herbert Simon, he's deceased author, but he's gone. He mentioned 3 things: optimizing and complexity. The optimization requires perfect knowledge. It requires perfect understanding, and it requires an exhaustive awareness of present options. All of that is impossible. It's impossible to achieve. So you have enough information that you get to the point that I think it was Bobby that said this last week. When is good enough good enough? This is good enough. I need to act. So when he asked the question earlier about businesses being able to, when is the right time to do something? When is the right time to hire more people? When is the right time to increase your capacity for technology, all the above? That's when you're getting into the adaptive side. Technical problems are going to exist in this world. It is something that we know. It is something that you can, to a degree, forecast, and we can go ahead and adapt to. What we can't do is adaptive challenges. It's like playing chicken. You're on motorcycles, you're on bicycles, you're running towards each other at 100 miles an hour, and the one who swerves at the last minute is a so-called loser. Well, if both of you don't swerve, what happens? We can have catastrophic events. But who knew the outcome of that beforehand? It's hard to predict. It's an impossible situation. So at some point in time, you have to say, this is good enough. This is the intel that we have. I'm making a decision. And this is what strategic leaders do. They understand that there's a risk. They understand that there's a risk of failure, but they also know that the benefits of succeeding far outweigh the risk.
That's right. That's right. So it's a situation.
And that's what Dwight Eisenhower did with D-Day. He made a decision ultimately that the potential risk that we were going to face did not overcome or supersede the benefits of launching that operation. And it was successful.
This is very interesting. This is very interesting. And we're getting a lot of phenomenal comments on your topics and on your level of competency and deep thought. So thank you for that. I think there's a lot of accolades right now and a lot of praise being given to your experience. Guys, if you're interested in having a higher level conversation, one of those 36,000 feet elevation conversations with Joel, bit.ly/pre-flight evaluation. In the comments, I'm going to put it in there again. Again, this is only for the most serious. This is not for the the person who's just want to have a conversation. This is not for you. This is for people who are very serious about having a serious, deep, concentrated conversation on how they can strategically apply strategic leadership and thinking to their business to go from where they are to where they want to go. This is not for the, fandom. This is not for that. This is only for the serious, because I want you to think about time and how valuable time is. If you value your time, then please value someone else's and use that link with extreme discretion. Again, 2-time battle and war arena, as well as 7-time deployment, strategic thinker. Joel D. Smith. Again, this has been a phenomenal episode of The Breakfast with the Brand. And I'm going to ask one more question before we go, because this is the second day of the last month of the first quarter. How important is measuring and tracking every single thing in your business?
It's critical. It's absolutely critical. Can you develop tools, or are there software out there to help you actually do all this good stuff? Yes. It does take sometimes a monetary investment in order to achieve all of the resources and adaptive nature of the research that you're trying to do. So absolutely, it is critical. And in the military, we track all that stuff. I don't know about the Marine Corps, what they called it, but the Army used to have way back. I don't want to predate myself, but we had what we used to call RTEPs, where you'd go out and you'd do training and you'd get evaluations. Another unit would come in and evaluate how you did your battle template. So you received different missions, you did receive different functions. Somebody would go in and throw some notional gas, a smoke grenade that was supposed to simulate that you got gas. How quickly did your people don their protective gear? Did you get on your mask? Did you get on all of your gear? If you didn't, then you started having casualties. Okay, when you started having casualties, what were the medics doing? What was the reports that were going forward? All these things that were taking place. So it was meant to determine and evaluate how prepared the unit was to go out and execute their mission essential task list. We called it the medal. So you went out and you did these things. Well, do we do that on the civilian side of the house? No, for the most part, I can't think of many companies that actually will go out and say, I'm going to put a notional problem into the mix just to see how my people operate. Yeah. Would I say that that is something that may or should be incorporated? Absolutely. We're seeing it in school systems now. Active shooter. You know, remember back in the days when we were younger, you had the tornado drills and you had other drills that you did. Now you have the active shooter drills. You have them in organizations as well. You know, companies are now incorporating active shooter drills. But how many drills do we have where you go into an organization and they said, okay, our computers have now just shut down. What do you do? What's your contingency? What's your backup plan? How do we continue to function and operate and service our customers when bad things happen? Because
all right, Joel, I'm sorry, they're gonna have to pay for the rest. They're gonna have to pay for the rest. Guys, if you want to know more about that, that's why you click on links. Like, there is a point where you stop getting things for free and you start paying for things. Right? If you want more information on that, which I know to be scenario thinking, they use it in governments. I've done it in my school. If you want to know how to set your business up so that it's attack proof, recession proof, pandemic proof, this is the conversation that you want to have. And these are the kinds of people that you want to speak to on this call right now. So waste no time. Just understand that if you do not self-disrupt, if you do not disrupt yourself internally over and over again, you will be disrupted by outside forces. And that is evidence-based, as Joel D. Smith's history in the military is. That is a fact, not a premise. This has been another edition of The Breakfast with the Brand. We'll see you next week. Let's grow. Make sure you make your next decision your best decision.